Hello and welcome to today's episode that deals with an important aspect of Indian economy. That is, the major factors concerning the low productivity in Indian agriculture. I am Sakshi Mandwal and the subject expert today is Indrani Roy Chaudhary, Reader, Department of Economics, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. As you all know, agriculture is the backbone of the Indian economy, providing employment of 52.1% of workforce according to the 2004-2005 data. Given India is the second most populous country in the whole world next to China, supporting 1.21 billion population, according to the 2011 census, the importance of the sector is to be well appreciated in the context of food security. However, the sector is undergoing a very sluggish phase in the recent years. This particular episode will try to explain the major problems faced by the agricultural sector, resulting in low productivity and growth. India has achieved a substantial breakthrough in agriculture in the 1970s, commonly known as Green Revolution. The increase in yield and productivity achieved in the 1970s and early 1980s has enabled the country to attain self-sufficiency in food grains and counter the seasonal shocks of flood, famine and droughts. However, the country fails to achieve any further technological breakthrough in agriculture since then, and the growth in agricultural GDP is showing decelerated trends in the recent years. The question of a food security for a growing billion population critically demands enhanced agricultural production and productivity in the form of a second green revolution. Some food crops like pulses, oilseeds, fruits and vegetables and allied agricultural products like poultry, meat, fisheries, etc. remained untouched in Green Revolution. These food products are essential for nutritional security, hence require more attention and productivity increase. India happens to be one of the largest growers and producers of most of the agricultural crops, but ranks very low in terms of yield. Compared with the productivity of the other countries and compared with its own potential, actual productivity levels in agriculture continue to be very low. It has largest area under rice and wheat in the world and is the second largest producer of these crops. However, in terms of productivity, its rank is 52nd in the world in rice and 38th in wheat. It is the largest producer of pulses in the world and has the largest area under pulse production. But in terms of pulse productivity, it ranks 138th in the world. Growth of agricultural GDP decelerated from over 3.5% per year during 1981 to 1982 and 1996 to 1997 to only around 2% during 1997 to 1998 and 2004 to 2005. This deceleration, although most marked in rain-fed areas, occurred in almost all states and covered almost all major subsectors, including those such as horticulture, livestock and fisheries, where growth was expected to be high. Recent trends and performance of agriculture has raised the following areas of concerns, particularly related to food security, farmers' income and poverty. Slowdown in agricultural growth. Widening economic disparities between irrigated and rain-fed areas. Increased vulnerability to world commodity price volatility following trade liberalization. This had an adverse effect on regions growing crops such as cotton and oilseeds. Uneven and slow development of technology. Inefficient use of available technology and inputs. Lack of adequate incentives and appropriate institutions. Degradation of natural resource base. Rapid and widespread decline in groundwater table with particularly adverse impact on small and marginal farmers. Against this backdrop, Let us now discuss the causes of low productivity of Indian agriculture. The causes of low productivity can be under following categories. A. General factors. B. Institutional factors. C. Technological factors. A. General factors are related to the natural and structural problems associated with the low productivity in Indian agriculture. The population of India is increasing at a rapid pace, but land under agriculture has increased only marginally. The dismal performance of non-agricultural sector as well as agricultural allied activities in the rural areas thus fail to provide alternative sources of employment to the rising population. This has led to more and more people crowding into agriculture in the form of disguised employment with their marginal contribution negligibly low. The average size of operational holding is decreasing over time, 70% below 1 hectare in 2003 as compared to 56% in 1982. Increasing pressure of population on land is partly responsible for the subdivision and fragmentation of holdings. Productivity of small uneconomic holding is generally low as it fails to reap benefits from scale operation. Half of those engaged in agriculture are still illiterate and just 5% have completed higher secondary education. Farming members in such families are twice as likely to be illiterate as non-farming members. Incomes and education are of course least amongst agricultural labourers. This leads to a vicious circle of low income, low capital and low knowledge base and low productivity. Due to the excessive pressure of population on land, wages in agricultural sector tends to be considerably low as compared to the industrial sector. Low wages in agricultural sector leads to low per capita income and this in turn leads to low labour productivity. Indian agriculture witnesses a kind of technological dualism. Capital and technology driven modern agriculture prevails in some selected pockets usually with large holdings, whereas outmoded subsistence type of production technique largely dominates the Indian subcontinent, usually with small holdings. The cheap labour leads to the adoption of outmoded labour-intensive methods of production. The farming technique depends largely on biological sources of energy, human and animal labour, monsoon rain and dung manure, and is highly susceptible to fluctuations and instability. Soil degradation is one of the major factors contributing low agricultural productivity. Government of India has recently estimated about 43% of the land suffers from high degradation, resulting in 33 to 67% yield loss. About 5% of the degraded land has encountered serious irreversible damage and is unusable. Rapid expansion of groundwater use for irrigation was a key factor in the relatively rapid growth of agriculture between the mid-1960s and late 1980s. But this continued trend of unsustainable use of ground-level water for irrigation purposes, compounded by unregulated industrial pollutions, both air and water, caused severe soil degradation and overexploitation of groundwater. Unplanned industrialization, widespread deforestation and drastic change in land use pattern have caused erosion of precious topsoils and depletion of ground and surface waters. In addition to erosion, salinity and alkalinity, soils are losing soil carbon and micronutrients due to irrational and unbalanced chemical fertilizer use. Naturally, all these have serious negative consequences on productivity. B. Institutional factors include those factors that arises out of improper or poor functioning of institutes. This may be due to some operational problems, lack of vision or lack of proper policy guidelines. To ensure sustained target growth of 4% per annum and to improve productivity, there is a need to significantly step up investment in agriculture, both by the private and public sectors. Moreover, in order to boost private investment in agriculture, public investment has to be geared appropriately to build up agricultural infrastructure. The gross capital formation (GCF) in agriculture and allied sectors relative to overall gross domestic product, that is GDP, has remained stagnant at around 2.5 to 3.0% during 2004 to 2005 to 2009 to 2010. As a result, the share of GCF in agriculture and allied sector in total GCF has remained in the range of 6.6 to 8.2% during the same period. Budgetary subsidies to agriculture have increased from around 3% of agriculture GDP in 1976 to 1980 to about 7% in 2001 to 2003. During the same period, public investment in agriculture declined from over 4% of agriculture GDP to 2%. Most of the subsidies are on fertilizer, power and irrigation water, and these have actually contributed to the degradation of natural resources. Further, a considerable amount of planned expenditure on agriculture is not on investment but on subsidies not accounted for in the above list. Even a relatively small percentage reduction in subsidies can finance relatively large increase in public investment in crucial areas such as soil amelioration, watershed development, groundwater recharge, surface irrigation and other infrastructure. This can allow substantial expansion of critical farm support system and improve productivity. Lack of adequate credit for investment is an important impediment towards high productivity in Indian agriculture. Modern agriculture is more technology intensive and requires huge investment for the mix of inputs like high yielding variety seeds, that is HYV, fertilizers, irrigation, etc. According to the report of Currency and Finance 2001-2002, credit delivery scenario to the small and marginal farmers are declining. The annual compound growth rate of direct finance disbursements to marginal farmers declined to 13% from 18.1% during the same period. The annual compound growth rate of medium or long-term loans disbursed to agricultural and allied activities declined to 9.7% in 1990s from 11.5% in the 1980s. This makes the small, middle and marginal farmers to be excessively dependent on moneylender. The usurious capital and rural indebtedness is the result of the production relation prevailing in Indian agriculture. This adversely affects the productivity and private investment in agriculture. Non-availability of credit on fair rate of interest and lack of marketing facilities virtually disincentivize farmers to produce more and make prerequisite investment in agriculture. This pushes down the productivity of land and per cultivator low. One important reason for low productivity is the exploitative tenurial system. Land reforms legislation was passed for abolition of intermediaries in the post-independence period, providing land ceilings, regulation of rents, security of tenure and ownership rights to tenants, consolidation of holding, etc. But serious bottleneck exists in the implementation stage and varies widely from state to state. Flaws in legislation has actually caused Benami transfer of lands and evolved a new dominant class of rural capitalists. Tenancy of most of the tenants continues to be insecure and exploitative. Similarly, consolidation of holding, which is very important instrument to solve the problem of fragmentation, is in the incomplete stage of implementation, as only 15 states have passed the laws. As on March 2002, consolidation of holding has been done only on 1/3 of the consolidable area of the country. The average size of holding is very small in India. It was merely 1.33 hectare in 2000 to 2001. 62.3% of operational holdings in 2000 to 2001 were marginal, less than 1 hectare. If small and marginal holdings, that is, holding less than 2 hectare, are considered together, we find as many as 81.3% holdings belong to this category, and they have 38.9% operated area under them. Thus, about 4/5 of operational holdings in India are small and marginal. The area operated by them is just 40%. Against this, large holdings greater than 10 hectares constitute only 1% of the total operational holdings, but occupies 13.2% of the operated area under them. This shows extreme inequalities in land ownership in India. Not only the size of holdings in India are small, but are also fragmented into number of units. Population pressure, decline of joint families, farmers' indebtedness, practice of sharecropping are some major causes towards subdivision and fragmentation of land holdings. The small size and subdivision and fragmentation of holdings causes wastage of land, management problem, affects modernization and productivity. The prices of most agricultural crops have shown increasing trends over the years, but subject to high fluctuations. Globalization and trade liberalization have resulted to greater integration of the Indian economy to world economy. Globally, agricultural prices are very volatile. Hence, agricultural prices are subject to high fluctuations and volatility, leading to uncertainty, risk and speculations. For instance, steep decline in price of a particular crop in some good year may inflict heavy losses to the growers of the crops, reducing their income and dampening their spirit to cultivate it further in the next year. Thus, with fixing the minimum support prices and procurement prices, the government tries to ensure the element of production incentive to the farmers. The impact of the risk reduction is expected to induce farmers to undertake larger investment and to adopt improved production technology to generate larger marketable surplus. Hence, a sound agricultural price policy encourages farmers to improve their productivity. Although the setting of Agricultural Prices Commission has largely controlled the fluctuation in agricultural prices, but also leading to inflationary trends. Moreover, this has led to the distortion in the cropping pattern and, as pointed out in the report of Currency and Finance 2001 to 2002, the fixation of government support prices are largely influenced by powerful agricultural lobbies backed by rich farmers. Due to this, the minimum support prices of rice and in particular wheat is higher than the cost of production, whereas cost of cereals and pulses have been less than the cost of production. This has made the cultivation of rice and wheat more attractive than pulses and coarse cereals, leading to diversion of cropping areas towards these crops. The inflationary trends and distortion in cropping patterns have deeper implications on the investment and productivity of not only pulses and coarse cereals but also wheat and rice. The cropping areas which were suitable for those inferior crops in terms of fertility and water requirements are now brought under the superior crops. C. Technological factors basically include the usage and intensity of agricultural inputs like irrigation, fertilizers, high-yielding varieties of seeds, and pesticides. Increase in agricultural production and productivity depends to a large extent on the availability of water. Indian agriculture is largely dependent on the vagaries of monsoon. The monsoon is not only erratic and subject to fluctuations, but also restricted to a few months in a year. Moreover, the variability of distribution of monsoon rain across the country makes some regions flood-prone and some drought-prone. Hence, the importance of irrigation is immense. Productivity on irrigated land is considerably higher than the productivity on unirrigated land. For instance, C.H. Hanumanta Rao, 2005, has argued in the late 1980s per hectare yield of food grains on irrigated lands was 2 to 6 times higher than the yields on unirrigated lands. But irrigation facilities are highly inadequate in India. For instance, the gross irrigated area as a percentage of gross cropped area was only 17% in 1950 to 1951. Despite massive efforts under the different plan periods, gross irrigated area as a percentage of gross cropped area increased to 44.6% during 2007 to 2008. Thus, even more than 55% of gross cropped area still depends on rains. Irrigation system in India is constrained by age-old infrastructure, backdated technology, poor maintenance, declining water table, and is therefore highly inefficient. The increasing phenomena of salinity and siltation have increased the cost of irrigation over the years. Moreover, limited irrigation facilities limits the scope of cropping intensity or multiple cropping, which otherwise could increase the agricultural production and productivity immensely. The high-yielding varieties of seeds and chemical fertilizers require substantial water at a regular interval of time. This is the reason why HYVP is limited to the irrigated areas only. Moreover, technology-intensive HYVP strategy requires huge capital investment, which is beyond the means of poor small farmers. The success of the high-yielding variety program is critical to the proper application of a package which includes appropriate and timely doses of water, high-yielding seeds, fertilizer, pesticides, etc. Moreover, the intensity of application and its yield depends largely on the capital and knowledge base of the farmers. Although the spread of HYV area as a percentage of total cropped area has increased rapidly in India since 1960s and 1970s, but appears to have tapered off after encompassing only the cereal segment like wheat, rice, jowar, bajra. Improved seeds technology continues to elude vital segment of the farm economy, such as pulses, oilseeds, fruits, and vegetables. Improved technology is most important factor for the growth of agricultural output. Agricultural research in India is underfunded and lacks clearly stated strategy that assigns definite responsibilities, prioritizes the research agenda rationally. Moreover, the research system has so far focused on breeding varieties that increase the yield potential of individual crops by enabling more intensive use of inputs. Although such research did increase potential yield substantially in the past, it put less emphasis on efficient and sustainable use of soil nutrients and water, or on identifying location-specific farming systems with proper mix of crops and livestock, especially for rain-fed areas. The extension services are highly inadequate in India. It suffers from poor dissemination of research and new technological innovations and is highly suffered from lack of coordination and effective bilateral flow of information amongst research, extension and implementation departments. These factors are largely responsible for the low adoption of technology by the farmers. Consequently, the farmers have a limited knowledge of modern farm management techniques, including soil conservation, crop rotation, etc. Public distribution system has a key role to play in improving the capacity building of the farmers by providing them information and service support and enabling them to take the right decision. Hope this overview of low productivity gives you some idea about the intensity of the problem. However, let me summarize the discussion for your benefits before we end. We basically tried to understand the major factors behind the low productivity in Indian agriculture. The major factors may be categorized into three heads like general factors, institutional factors, and technical factors. From this discussion, we may conclude that the pressing need to accelerate agricultural growth should not be at the cost of sustainability of our natural resource base, which is starkly limited. The main challenge lies in the ability to significantly reduce the dependence of the workforce on agriculture by creating enough non-farm opportunities to absorb the surplus labor in rural areas. Ensuring food security and farmer welfare thus requires support systems to extend technology and scale benefits in a sustainable manner to a huge existing workforce in agriculture that lacks non-farm skills. Thus, the choice before the nation is clear: to invest more in agriculture and allied sectors with the right strategies, policies, and interventions. This is what we have for you for today. Thank you all for listening to me. Have a good day.